10-Minute Murder contains depictions of actual crimes. What you are about to hear is real and violent in nature. Discretion is advised. This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to the Brief and Bingeable True Crime Podcast. I'm Joe, the host, and this is 10-Minute Murder. Thanks for being here today. If you are brand new to the podcast, thank you for checking it out, and I hope you'll consider sticking around. You can subscribe or follow or whatever your app says, and when you subscribe, you'll automatically get new episodes. You won't have to go searching a couple of times a week to find out if old Joe has uploaded a new episode or not, or if he's talking about himself in the third person. Also, let me invite you to connect with 10-Minute Murder on Facebook and Instagram. Links for that are in the show notes of this episode, or you can just as easily type it into the search bar and it'll pop right up. I post visuals on social media that go along with the stories you hear about. It's nothing gross and it's nothing graphic, but enough for you to put a face with the names that you are hearing about. The story today is about a Detroit mother. During the process of being evicted from her townhouse in 2015, it was discovered that inside a deep freezer were two bodies stacked on top of each other. They had apparently been there a long time. It took 3 days for them to thaw, and identification and autopsy could be performed. They were the mother's own children, Stephen and Stoni. Mitchelle Blair had apparently killed them and kept them in the freezer for a couple of years. Mitchelle Blair wanted everyone to think she was a loving mother, a mother that would bend over backward to provide for her children. That's the face that she put on to the people on the outside. But in the privacy behind her front door, she was angry and abusive. She had 4 children. Stoni and Gabby were the 2 girls, and they had the same father, and the 2 boys, Stephen and Matthew, and they had the same father. Mitchelle and her 4 kids lived in a Detroit, Michigan townhouse that they rented. Mitchelle had a hard time keeping a job, which made paying the rent difficult. Welfare provided some assistance, and family members helped as well. The help from family eventually ran out. They told her that they could no longer afford to keep giving her money and suggested that she go find a job, any job, or go to school to learn a skill or trade. But they would definitely not be providing any more monetary help. She ignored their advice. On March 24th, 2015, a crew of people ordered by the 36th District Court entered the home and started moving Mitchelle's stuff out. She had been evicted for non-payment. Mitchelle wasn't home. She was over at a neighbor's house with 2 of her children. Inside the townhouse, it was a mess. Absolutely trashed. In the living room, there was a large white deep freezer. When the crew opened the lid, they saw on top the body of a girl wrapped in plastic. The girl ended up being 13-year-old Stoni Blair. They closed the lid and called the police. When the police arrived, they found that below Stoni was her 8-year-old half-brother, Stephen. Neighbors tipped off police that Mitchelle was hiding out at another neighbor's house. They found her and took her into custody. Mitchelle didn't act shocked or deny anything. She simply said, "I'm sorry." The bodies were sent to the medical examiner, where it took a few days for them to thaw. The medical examiner determined that their deaths were caused by severe beatings and burns, and they had been in the freezer for more than 2 years. The reason Mitchelle said 2 of her kids were dead and in the freezer is because they were sexually abusing Matthew, the youngest son, so she killed them. In court, Mitchelle testified that she came home one day to find Matthew playing with dolls, posing them inappropriately. She asked why he was doing that, and that conversation led to Matthew telling Mitchelle that Stephen had been raping him. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, she severely beat Stephen. The abuse included choking him and pouring scalding hot water on him. He eventually died from the abuse. She didn't necessarily intend for Stephen to die, but she was okay with it. She put his dead body in the freezer. About 9 months later, she found out that Stoni was also in on the sexual abuse of Matthew. She beat and tortured Stoni until eventually suffocating her 13-year-old daughter to death. She told Gabby, the oldest child, to put Stoni in the freezer with Stephen's body. There is some question to the truth of whether or not Matthew was actually sexually abused. The prosecutor in the case referred multiple times to the lack of evidence of an assault on Matthew. It's not known if he told anyone other than his mother, and the 2 children accused were killed, so they can't speak for themselves. We only have the word of Mitchelle Blair, and she says that while she was hitting Stoni, Matthew was standing there saying, "Do it again, do it again," and he wouldn't have encouraged her to do that if Stoni was innocent. Mitchelle explained the timeline of events like this. Stoni was first sexually abusing Stephen and threatened him not to say anything. Stoni and Stephen then started sexually abusing Matthew. Matthew tells his mother about what Stephen was doing to him. Stoni beats and threatens Stephen to keep him quiet and not tell on her. Stephen was killed. Mitchelle found out 9 months later that Stoni was abusing Matthew, and also discovered that she had been doing the same thing to Stephen previously. Stoni was killed.
I came home one day. My daughter Gabrielle, my oldest, met me at the door, and she's like, "Mom, come see what Maddie doing with his dials." He was making one dial, his little wrestle man, hump on top of the other. No, I'm like, "Maddie, why was you doing that?" I said, "Anybody ever do this to you?" He said, "No." I said, "Then why are you doing that?" And he said, "Yes, Stephen did." And I was like, and I went upstairs and I said, "Stephen, Matthew said you was humping on him." And then Stephen stood up and he looked at me, and right then I could tell something was wrong in his face, because he was just like this. "Tell me the fucking truth. Was you humping on Matthew?" He said, "Yes, but that was all." And I said, "Did you hump on him with your underwear off?" He said, "No." Matthew yelled out, "Yes, he did." And I just remember going in the hallway, walking back and forth, and I walked back up and I was like, "You fucked your brother." So I started punching Stephen. Matthew at this point is just spilling out. And Mom, and he's doing like this, and he do this thing almost every night. The reason I put bags over Stephen's head is because we had Maddie. I thought Maddie peed in the bed. Didn't know it was Stephen waking up every morning pissing on Matthew like he was a damn piece of shit, okay? They had bunk beds. Stephen would get out the bed in the middle of the night. You would rape him in his own bed. You would pee on him instead of going to the bathroom. I'm waking up every morning thinking Matthew's a bedwetter. The reason I put bags over Stephen's head is because my son told me that the plastic on his bed, because I thought he was a bedwetter, he said, "Sometimes, Mom, I couldn't breathe. Stephen was laying on me and he had my face down and the plastic on the bed. I couldn't breathe and he was humping on my butt like a basketball." That's when I got a garbage bag and started putting it over Stephen's head. He lost consciousness. I did that a couple times.
You were intending to inflict serious physical harm, but not kill him?
Definitely.
Okay. You talked about choking him. Did you also burn him?
Yes, I did.
Okay, how did you do that?
Hot water. Scalding hot water. In our bathroom, the hot water gets extremely hot. I stood him in the bathtub naked. You fucked up my son with your dick, you know? So yes, I threw hot water in his genital area multiple times. I threw hot water on him repeatedly.
Did it make him burn?
Yes, it did. His skin came off.
Did you also make him drink Windex?
Yes, I did, because Matthew told me in the middle of the night he had took him in the basement and he made him drink the blue stuff from under the sink. And I'm like, what blue stuff? So I walked Maddie downstairs. He showed me what I said. "You made Maddie drink fucking Windex."
Okay, again, you knew you were seriously harming him, but you didn't intend to murder him.
No.
Okay. But your actions ultimately caused his death.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
And if I had killed Stephen intentionally, I definitely would be proud to say I did. I don't feel no remorse for the death of them demons.
What did you do to Stoni Blair that makes you guilty of premeditated murder?
I intentionally killed her.
How did you do that?
When I found out about what Stoni was doing to Matthew, it was 9 months later after finding out about Stephen. So for the whole 9 months we were in the house, she was still raping my child. I did not know that. When I first found out, after Maddie told me, I repeatedly punched her. My son, I told him to tell me every single thing she did to him. So as she was telling me, he was telling me more and more things that she did. I assaulted her every time he told me what she did to him. By assault, I mean I punched her. I have put a bag over her head till she lost consciousness. I threw hot water on her.
Did you hit her in the head with a wooden stick?
Yes, I hit her on her head multiple times, over and over. I hit her on her back. I kicked her.
You said you killed her by putting a grocery bag over her head?
Yes, I put a bag over her head, but it got worse that day. Yes, I did. It got worse that day because Matthew would tell me how she would take her menstrual pad and squeeze her blood out in his mouth. Okay. And it was over with after that. It was over with.
You meant to kill her?
I definitely meant to kill her. If I had a chance to do it again, I would. She was standing in the bathtub. I was throwing hot water on her. My son was standing outside the bathroom door, and he was telling me everything he was telling me. I looked at her, and I'm like, "You did this?" And she's like, "Yes." So I actually had a stick, and I was hitting her in the head. Every time he told me something, I hit her very hard in her head, and I was throwing hot water on her. And when I actually took her out of the bathroom, I took her back in her room, and I just kept staring at her, and I said, excuse my language, but I'm like, why the fuck would you do this to him? Just like, I'm constantly asking her. She kept saying, I hate him. And she admitted to me that she hated Gabrielle, she hated Steven, she hated everybody. And I'm asking her why. She says, everybody always think Matthew's so cute. And I'm like, I meant to. I definitely meant to. And I do not feel any remorse for what I did to Stoni.
The two living children have undergone counseling and evaluation. During that time, evidence of long-time physical abuse of Gabby and Matthew was evident in the form of cuts, chipped teeth, scars, and burns. They both confirmed that they had been beaten by Mitchelle Blair, their mother, for their entire lives. Mitchelle Blair was sentenced to life without parole. She will never be released from prison. That is today's 10-Minute Murder, the brief and bingeable true crime podcast. Thanks for listening today. And if you have a story you'd like for me to possibly cover here on this podcast, you can email it to me, 10minutemurder@gmail.com. You can also easily connect with this podcast on social media. Just click the link in the show notes of this episode, or even easier, type 10-Minute Murder into Facebook or Instagram, and you'll see it pop up. If you happen to listen on Apple Podcasts, it would make my day if you left a 5-star review. And doing that, it helps the show grow and reach more and more weirdos like us that are into the true crime genre. Before you go, if you aren't subscribed to 10-Minute Murder, wherever you're listening right now, hit the subscribe button and you will never miss another episode. If you have friends that are into brief true crime stories, tell them about 10-Minute Murder. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.